The year is 1894. In Paris, a French army officer named Alfred Dreyfus is publicly humiliated. He is accused of betraying his country. In front of a crowd, his medals are torn off and he is sent to prison. But there is a deeper truth. Dreyfus is innocent. And more importantly, he is Jewish. As people shout death to the Jews in the streets, one man is watching closely. His name is Theodor Herzl. Until this moment, Herzl believed Jews could live peacefully in Europe. But what he sees changes his thinking. He realizes that no matter how much Jews integrate, they may still remain outsiders. This moment becomes a turning point. Herzl begins to argue that Jews need a country of their own, where they can live safely and govern themselves. This idea becomes the foundation of Zionism. But this is only one side of the story. Here is another story. The year is 1948. In a village near Jaffa, a Palestinian family is packing their belongings in a hurry. They believe they will return in a few days. The fighting has reached nearby areas and people are being told to leave for safety. The family locks their home and leaves. They carry only what they can. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into years. They never return. This moment becomes part of what Palestinians call the Nakba, meaning catastrophe. Around 700,000 Palestinians were displaced from their homes during this period. For them, this was not just a political event, it was the loss of home, land, and identity. Two different moments, two different experiences, but both connected to the same land. To understand how we reached here, we need to go back and look at the full history. The story of Zionism and Israel in Palestine is not a simple one. It is a long historical process shaped by fear, identity, migration, and political decisions taken over many decades. To understand it properly, it is important to begin much before the creation of Israel in 1948. Zionism began in Europe in the late 19th century. At that time, Jewish communities were living across many European countries, but they often faced discrimination and violence. In places like Russia and Eastern Europe, there were repeated attacks on Jews known as pogroms. Even in more developed parts of Europe, Jews were not fully accepted. Many educated Jews began to feel that no matter how much they integrated into European society, they would still remain outsiders. One of the key thinkers of this movement was Theodor Herzl. He argued that the problem of anti-Semitism could not be solved within Europe. According to him, Jews needed a nation of their own where they could live safely and govern themselves. This idea became the foundation of Zionism, which was essentially a movement for Jewish self-determination. For many Zionists, the most meaningful place for such a homeland was Palestine. This land had historical and religious significance for Jews as it was associated with ancient Jewish kingdoms and sacred texts. However, it is important to note that by the late 19th century, Palestine was not empty. It was part of the Ottoman Empire and was inhabited mostly by Arab Muslims and Christians who had been living there for generations. From the 1880s onwards, small groups of Jewish migrants began moving to Palestine. They bought land and established agricultural communities. At first, these migrations were limited in number and there were instances of cooperation between Jewish settlers and local Arab populations. However, as migration increased, tensions also began to rise. The two communities had different national aspirations. Jews wanted to build a homeland while Arab residents increasingly saw this as a threat to their own future. The situation changed significantly during and after the First World War. The Ottoman Empire collapsed and Britain took control of Palestine. In 1917, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, which expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. At the same time, Britain had also made promises to Arab leaders about independence. This created a contradiction that would shape future conflicts. During the British rule, Jewish migration increased further, especially in the 1930s as Jews fled persecution in Europe. This was a period when tensions turned into open conflict. There were protests, riots, and violence between Jewish and Arab communities. Both sides felt that their future in the land was under threat. The turning point came after the Second World War. The Holocaust, in which around 6 million Jews were killed by Nazi Germany, deeply shocked the world. It strengthened the argument that Jews needed a safe and independent homeland. There was growing international support for the idea of creating a Jewish state. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a plan to divide Palestine into two separate states, one for Jews and one for Arabs. Jewish leaders accepted the plan, even though it did not give them all the land they wanted. Arab leaders rejected it, arguing that it was unfair to divide a land where Arabs were still a majority. In 1948, Israel declared independence under David Ben-Gurion. Immediately after this, neighboring Arab countries went to war with Israel. Israel survived the war and even expanded beyond the boundaries suggested by the United Nations. During this period, a large number of Palestinians, estimated at around 700,000, were displaced from their homes. For Palestinians, this event is known as the Nakba or catastrophe. From this point onwards, the motives of Israel can be understood in stages. In the early years, the primary focus was survival. Israel was surrounded by hostile neighbors and fought several wars. Security became a central concern of the state. This included building a strong military and ensuring that future attacks could be prevented. A major shift happened after the Six-Day War in 1967. Israel captured territories including the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. These areas had large Palestinian populations. Holding these territories gave Israel strategic advantages, but it also created a long-term political problem. Since then, Israel's approach has combined multiple motives. One important motive is security. Israeli leaders argue that controlling certain territories helps prevent attacks and provides strategic depth. Another motive is political and ideological. Some groups within Israel believe that these lands are historically part of the Jewish homeland and should not be given up. At the same time, there is also the practical issue of maintaining control while managing international pressure and internal political divisions. For Palestinians, the situation looks very different. Many see Zionism not as a movement of return but as a form of displacement. They argue that they lost their land and continue to live under occupation or in exile. The expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank is seen by them as a major obstacle to forming their own independent state. In simple terms, the conflict is about two groups with strong and deeply rooted claims to the same land. For Jews, the land represents safety, history, and survival after centuries of persecution. But for Palestinians, it represents their home, identity, and rights as people who have lived there for generations. Because both sides see the issue in these fundamental terms, finding a solution has been extremely difficult. It is not just a political disagreement, but a conflict tied to history, identity, and lived experience. That is why, even after many decades, the issue remains unresolved. Thank you for watching. If you like this story and want more such stories in your feed, please click on the subscribe button. I'll see you again.